So you want to be in this group, do you? You want to stand among the ranks of college football? Then you have to earn it. Let's go! Come with a hunger that you know will never stop.
You're either elite or you're not. And that's what we've been saying.
Be consistent, but unpredictable.
We're not going to let somebody tell us what we should be.
What a scene here in West Lafayette.
Don't fear falling, because you know how to get back up.
Touchdown, North Carolina.
Shine a little brighter, stretch a little further, all so you can climb just a little bit higher.
And the Crimson Tide survive.
Simply put, win. Then win again, and again, and again. Make your case.
Let the carnage and the chaos continue.
Then let the debate begin.
I mean, the debate has begun, and I'm shook. I don't even know what the hell we're doing anymore.
Michigan?
I wish I had some great answer for you all.
Michigan!
We have been fired up in here since we got the announcement. I don't know what's happening anymore. It's Rankings Reaction presented by Cheez-It, Mike Golic Jr., Christine Williamson. I'm Jason Fitz. We're sitting here just like you guys are. We don't get it in advance. We're sitting here watching the announcement. Reese and the guys doing God's work. Madison Square Garden in between the games of the Champions Classic, giving us all sorts of rankings. And I thought there was one thing we could be sure of. In fact, Mike, I went on your radio show earlier today, and we were talking about the
Golic
rankings.
Jr., 3 to 7 Eastern.
Check it out. It's
Monday through
fantastic
Friday,
work.
ESPN Radio.
There was
ESPN
one
Plus.
thing I was sure of, and that's that Michigan State would still be ahead of Michigan because they played a couple weeks ago. It turns out the committee has just rolled everything up and thrown it into chaos. I don't know what we're doing.
I love a little drama. Like, I love when this is exactly what I said last week. I was like, I just want things to get really crazy so it can be interesting and we can be shook every single week. And this is exactly what I wanted.
Yeah, but also, what the hell, man? I'm not normally the one that buys in on a lot of this committee slander where everyone wants to say they've got all these ulterior motives and tries to look too much at their thinking, because we've been through this, because we talk about all the time how we get to go through this mock ranking thing. Michigan and Michigan State played 2 weeks ago. College Game Day was there. So when we look at the top 7, because they had to put 7 in this graphic because they knew we were going to get all pissed off about this.
That is true.
Georgia and Alabama still doing the thing here. This is where it already starts to get weird. Because Oregon is still above Ohio State. You think, all right, cool, they just move up from last week. Michigan State lost. Cincinnati's top 5. Cool. What?
So, to be clear, committee, the head-to-head matchup between Oregon and Ohio State matters, even though it was early in the season. And right now, clearly, Ohio State's been playing better of late than Oregon. But despite that, it's still really important. Unless it's not important, which is the case for Michigan, Michigan State. Now, I've had people already tweeting me saying, well, don't lose to an unranked team. Kiss my butt. You just
No, lose to an unranked team. Oregon lost to Stanford.
Unranked?
Stanford.
In fact,
you can context the hell out of that. I watched that Stanford team just get Donkey Kong this last week by Utah. And you're going to talk about context relative to their loss against now ranked Purdue? I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
And also, before we even get into Christine Williamson's amazing conspiracy theories that last week all over.
It's not a conspiracy. It's actual fact.
This week, I'm starting to buy in because last time I checked, Baylor lost to an unranked TCU team, and they fell one spot in the ranking.
Baylor fell one spot in the ranking because guess what? Oklahoma still has to play them. And I love Gary Barta so much, but he likes to say he doesn't look to the future. They always look at what already happened. They don't look at what's going to happen. However, it's kind of weird that Baylor drops 1, Michigan State loses to a Purdue team that is now ranked, and they drop 4. That makes no sense.
So, let me say this. Kirk Herbstreit, I love you. You do spectacular work. Kirk constantly said tonight, this is going to work itself out. Relax. It's going to work itself out. Do we know that? Because last time I checked, Michigan and Michigan State both still play Ohio State. Now, maybe nobody in the room believes this is going to happen, but there is a path where Michigan wins out the rest of the way, which would be a fairly easy schedule for them other than Ohio State, and Michigan State wins out the rest of the way, which would require that they beat Ohio State. They'd also have to beat Penn State, so they have a couple of ranked opponents.
Unranked Penn State.
Yeah, you're right.
Despite winning versus 2 top 25
Head-to-head.
teams, Penn State's still hanging out on ranked.
So this committee has told us tonight, if these two teams win out, the fact that they just played a couple of weeks ago doesn't matter because of Purdue? Like, that makes no sense to me. So as much as we want to say, well, this works itself out, that's cool because that usually happens. But that doesn't excuse the committee from just trusting the fact that it's going to work itself out, when, in fact, there's a very real scenario that could have these two teams win out and suddenly it isn't worked out. I'm angry.
I understand the idea that if you look at this situation and you were to say, like Ohio State and Oregon, hey, you guys played in week 2. We've seen so much growth from this one team.
It wasn't that long
We've
ago.
seen so much change. Michigan and Michigan State played 2 weeks ago. Like, imagine you're strolling off the battlefield in 1783 and you think you're the U.S. and you just won the American Revolution. And the next day the committee's like, nah, you still British. You're still British.
I think the thing that.
How would that work?
By the way, I didn't know it was 1783.
I was over here furiously Googling because I was just ready to 77.
Literally what you were
I was over here Googling when did the U.S. win the
goodness,
Our
that's
school
amazing.
systems have failed us, which is part of why maybe you could argue England has now surpassed us in strength of resume, but not in 1783.
Okay, here's my thing. I think the one thing that the committee always says is it's week to week. I have no idea what's going on over there. with
Country
wars
strength of
and stuff.
resume.
But I think the thing that stands
What the average country could do against your schedule.
I'm gonna let Fitz have this moment. Because he always. We have one of these like every once in a while.
Oh no, we hit the Fitz meltdown
Fitz
button.
absolutely malfunctions completely. And I never understand what triggers it.
The U.S. is sitting at 5 right now. We got a couple of ranked opponents. Don't swear.
Country strength the resume.
Anyways.
Oh, sorry. I'm fine.
You're good?
Sweden doesn't have a lot of tough ones left in the schedule.
What is going on? What is wrong with these people?
Which country would be in the group of 5?
That's actually a really good question.
See, listen, we're having the conversation that this world needs to have, right? Christine, I'm sorry for undercutting all your points of
No,
my
it's not.
idiocy.
It's literally just Fitz.
Is that
My thing
Oh no.
is when the committee says they look at the week to week. They don't look at the whole thing. They just look at how teams perform that week. So let's take that into consideration. Alabama looked like garbage. Like every other team, like the teams didn't look good across the board.
Yeah, it was a bad
why wasn't there
weekend.
more shuffling around if you think it's a week-to-week thing? Why isn't there any other movement? Why is the movement Michigan going over Michigan State, Baylor going down 1? Oregon State didn't even play and they jumped 1. Like, why is that the movement?
I also think it's a little weird. I mean, if we're just talking about, if we took last week and then we're coming in and saying we're going to reanalyze everything this week. Well, last weekend, we didn't see a lot of great, right? We didn't see great from Alabama. We didn't see great from Ohio State. The best of those teams, I think we'd have to reasonably look at Oregon and say, okay, Oregon played pretty well in torrential rain against Washington. I really thought I was not going to be surprised if Oregon found themselves at number 2, not because I think they're the second best team in the country, but because they're the only team that actually played with some level of confidence out of that list. And so I thought they might move up. The fact that Alabama's still sitting there, I know they took on an LSU team that threw the kitchen sink out of Mike, but I mean, I think there's a little bit of is struggle being judged the same by everybody.
I'll say this. If you just watched the first half of the Alabama-LSU game, you could still talk yourself into them being the number 2 team in the country.
Yeah.
If you clicked on the second half of that game,
That's fair.
where everyone up front kind of forgot their assignments and how to block, then you would start to have a little bit more concern about this situation. Alabama getting the benefit of the doubt isn't going to surprise me anymore. Like, that's not going to be one of those things in this conversation, which I understand seems inconsistent. But again, like, we're human beings. The benefit of the doubt is sort of caked into how we buy into this stuff. But I don't know, man. It's just, I feel like we finally reached like a threshold where we're being asked to consider so much. Normally, I am very, very empathetic to the committee's plight because college football scheduling is just a bizarre, weird nest of inconsistency. Like you compare it to the NFL. I don't know how these people are supposed to do it. But my God, we talk about all these metrics, and I get that this is not the only data point for Michigan and Michigan State. But it was 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago, yeah.
We were talking about, and it wasn't like it was some sort of like total fluke. Like we were talking about Kenneth Walker as the front runner for the Heisman. He played so well in that game.
And Pollock kept saying it when they were doing the release, and I think as sarcastic as the statement might be, he's right. Like, hey, if only we could see how this would play out on the field. We just saw it. Like, I can't get that out of my head, and that's why, like, I'm with you, Mike. I think this show has always tried to do a really nice job of being fair about the process and how difficult it is. How many times have you heard me say, look, if you got 13 friends in a room and tried to agree on a piece of pizza, it's impossible. Like, which pizza is the best is an impossible debate. I feel the human element of it. This is the first time in the 5 years of doing this show that I really look at the committee and I think, man, they got it drastically wrong. This is this is just not well done.
I think the thing, too, about the pizza argument is that the pizza isn't going up against one another, and they're not literally handing people else. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no actual competition there. So, like, yes, you can't agree on something that's, like, arbitrary, like, which one tastes better to you? But like if pizzas are going head to head and actually playing, there's something that you have to look at. And actually, this has nothing to do with what we're talking about right now, but you had a little moment a little bit ago, and one of our producers, on this show, but Kenny Legan actually tweeted and said, New Zealand has huge Cincinnati group of 5 energy.
Oh, okay. You want to see, like, and that's a good point here if we want to New Zealand this conversation up. Remember last week when Cincinnati was ranked at 6 and everyone thought it was the greatest slight known to man?
Yeah.
They're sitting pretty right now. Like, I understand their remaining strength of schedule and all those arguments. Like, that just means they have a really good chance to stay undefeated. They moved up. Like, I called the Cincinnati-Tulsa game this weekend. I saw them as close as you can for the last 2 weeks. That team didn't play great against Tulsa. Tulsa had a chance to win that thing twice at the end of regulation in a way that would have derailed all of this. Cincinnati has had last couple of games where they looked far less than the standard. And they got rewarded by moving up a spot behind a couple of teams that have a very real chance of losing right now. Like all of that for Cincinnati starting last week as the highest ranked group of 5 team ever and moving up to 5 this week. Like, they're going to be fine. I feel like we were just itching to be mad about that.
Well, and I know, Kristen, we've got some reaction, but real quick to that, Mike, like, that screams to the inconsistency from one week to the next. Because we sat here with Gary Barta last week, and he specifically referenced the fact that Cincinnati hasn't looked good enough the last couple of weeks. Guess what? They didn't look good enough last Saturday either. Right. So, like, if that was the reason that they were sitting at 6, then why are they now sitting at 5? And now it was like, we're more comfortable with it now. Like, it's just maddeningly inconsistent.
None of it makes any sense. I feel like they're just kind of like we said, it's a really tough situation. It's a hard thing to do, right? I just feel like they're doing it wrong. Okay, so I want to say this. Let's look at some tweets. And I know that, Mike, you're going to like this one. Andrew, I don't know how to say his last name. Callie says, whispers. Notre Dame's one loss is better than Michigan State's.
All right.
I mean,
listen, I don't. I'm a little bit of a troll when I say this, but I kind of started to bring it up this weekend.
Yo, put your feet up and enjoy this.
I'm just saying. I just want you, go home, sit down, grab the kids, and prepare them for the conversation about Notre Dame that you're going to have in 2 weeks. Because Notre Dame's sitting here right now at number 9. They move up one slot because of the Michigan State loss and because Wake Forest, the previously undefeated Power 5 Wake Forest, lost to North Carolina, who Notre Dame just beat the week before. As we look at the rest of the top 25 when the rankings come out here, all I'm telling you is it is not a far-fetched world where Oklahoma's still sitting at number 8 right now, where Notre Dame, who doesn't have any great wins left, but like Cincinnati, is probably going to win out from here on out. I think Cincinnati's going to have a tough one with Houston in the AAC championship game. But Notre Dame's going to win out with no title game, be sitting there likely at 11-1, just looking up and saying, got a really good loss. Notre Dame's looked really good since they lost to Cincinnati in the middle of the season here. And if we're already doing these head-to-heads don't matter all that much, and all of a sudden push comes to shove at all in that conversation, there's no telling what they could do with Notre Dame.
I really think y'all should turn this into like a Cheez-It eating things, like just
How
every
many
time
times you say
every time
Notre
Mike
Dame?
gives us a Notre Dame take every week, you just take a handful of Cheez-Its. And Christine gives us a conspiracy theory.
I want to get to the
shovel
conspiracy
the
theory because Josh D says, why does the CFP hate the Sooners? Why? They're literally 9-0. And I would like to go into my conspiracy theory situation because when you look at the rankings overall, exactly. It seems, I understand that obviously Oklahoma, they're undefeated. They're a Power 5 team. They're at the top of the Big 12 conference.
Strength of resume is, I think, currently number 2.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So look at the rankings really fast. We were just talking about the fact that Baylor goes down 1 to number 13. Oklahoma State does not play and goes up to now being in the top 10, okay? Oklahoma still has to play Oklahoma State, and Baylor. Those are going to be, if they get those wins, it is going to be a lot easier, Mike, in my opinion, and I'm sure you agree with this, for Oklahoma to sneak their way into the top 4 than it would be for Notre Dame. And so in my opinion, even though Gary Barter likes to say that he doesn't look at what's going to happen in the future. They're only looking at what happens right now. It's very odd that the Big 12 has a very easy way into the top 4.
Well, I would say this, Christine. I appreciate the conspiracy of all this.
They
and looking
love
at
them.
Taking into the rankings as a whole. I will say, no undefeated Power 5 team has ever been left out of the college football playoff. So that is Oklahoma's path to this. Like, even if those teams were knocked down a bit, if Oklahoma wins all those games, they're going to be in it.
That raises an interesting question. We'll get some insight here from one of our favorite experts, Heather Dinich, college football reporter extraordinaire for ESPN, joining us. Heather, earlier you tweeted you don't understand why Michigan's ahead of Michigan State. Don't make you try to explain it. So the one thing we're going to do on this show is make it try. Like, I've been yelling, I've been screaming, I've been eating Cheez-Its. I still can't figure it out. Heather, like, what are they thinking?
I meant to tag all of you in that tweet because I knew this was coming. Look, and Christine nailed it. If there's one thing that we know about the selection committee year after year, it's that they are consistently inconsistent, not just from week to week, but from year to year and season to season. And selection committee chair Gary Barta was drilled about this on the teleconference. After the rankings come out, he gets on the phone with reporters every week, and many of the questions were about this. And one of the things that he said was that the selection committee talked about Michigan and Michigan State closely last week. He would not go so far as to say that there were people in the room who were ready to put them ahead of Michigan State last week, but he said that there's a conversation that Michigan is the more, quote, complete team. So people do have to remember, and I will say this knowing because I stare at the protocol for all of these years, head-to-head is one factor, right? But I can't explain it this week.
So real quick follow-up. If Michigan and Michigan State both do the impossible and beat Ohio State, there's a scenario where they get all the way to the end of the year. You're telling me at the end of the year that this committee could put Michigan in over Michigan State in that situation, even though they have a head-to-head?
We saw it today, didn't we? Would you bet against it?
It just doesn't. We'll move on. I can't make it make sense. This is the most flabbergasted I've been in 5 years of this show.
Okay, in the theme of trying to have you make things make sense that don't necessarily make sense, we see Alabama not move at all, even though they weren't that impressive against LSU. Cincinnati jumps one, even though they weren't that impressive against Tulsa. And I remember reading your article before everything came out, and you said that there could be movement there. Are you surprised that there wasn't?
No, not necessarily, because I thought it could go two ways. I thought that it would either be exactly what happened today, with the exception of the Michigan State move, or I did think that it was certainly possible that Alabama could drop a spot. I thought it was going to go Georgia, Oregon, Alabama, Ohio State, Cincinnati, Michigan State, Michigan. That's what I thought there was a possibility for today. Obviously, 2 and 3 were flipped. The committee loves Alabama. It loves Alabama. And by doing that and keeping it there, even on a day when they played bad, this just further reinforces the notion to me that there's a realistic possibility a 2-loss Alabama can finish in the top 4 if it loses a close game to Georgia in the SEC championship. Now, we have to remember, Alabama has has not clinched the West yet. If they lose to Auburn in the regular season finale and Texas A&M runs the table, you could see the Aggies in the championship.
Heather, forgive me if I missed this, because I know when Gary was on with the fellas on TV, he was asked about the Michigan State discrepancy there. Was Gary asked at all in any of the follow-up questions about how they justify that but still have Oregon sitting ahead of an Ohio State team that's been better than them since that loss?
Yes, he was. And he answered because he talked about Ohio State and Oregon last week, and because both of those teams won, was his reasoning. This week, nothing changed, whereas we saw Michigan State lose. So that was the difference in the answer and the response to that question. But because you brought that up again, I just want to make one more point on this, if I may, and it's that realistically, it doesn't matter. People can get all upset and up in arms over it right this skinny minute, and I understand that, and I understand the confusion, but the bottom line is this. Because there are 3 Big Ten teams ranked in the top 7, and they have to play each other, a one-loss Big Ten champion is like a lock for this. So if you're Michigan State, win out, beat Ohio State, win the Big Ten, and you're in this thing.
Yeah, the only fail to that, I'll go back to it. I mean, if I'm Michigan State and I win out, if Michigan also wins out, I'm not in, Heather. I think that's my concern for all of this. I hear you on that, win out and it's fine, but is it that simple? Because again, Michigan can win out also. They can both win out.
Well, but the head-to-head matters in the conference standings.
Okay, yeah.
So they win the tiebreaker, they go to the Big Ten championship.
Right.
Heather,
that's fair. I wasn't thinking of that.
So now that we've got the Big Ten sorted out in that path, I do want to get to Cincinnati, sitting there at number 5. They move up one slot. A lot of people last week looked at that 6 seed as a slight. Does them getting bumped up despite a lackluster performance against Tulsa all of a sudden ignite more hope in the idea that they could actually do this?
Well, sure, because what this shows us is that the more upsets there are, the wider that door opens to the college football playoff. They moved up by default, so somebody else loses, they can move up again. To me, they need at least 2 of 3 things to happen. They need to make sure there aren't 2 SEC teams, which means Georgia has to beat the snot out of Alabama in the SEC championship game, and they need to have a 2-loss or a 3-loss Pac-12 champion to eliminate them. Or, you guys were talking about Oklahoma. Do not count out the Sooners. But Cincinnati, it would really help them to have a 2-loss Big 12 champ. So 2 of those 3 things, in my mind, have to happen to truly open the door for the Bearcats.
Do you feel like it's likely, because we were just talking about this, that an undefeated Oklahoma team end up in the CFP if they beat Baylor, obviously beat Oklahoma State? Those are 2. Why did Baylor only drop 1? After losing to TCU? That doesn't make any sense. But do you feel like it's more likely for Oklahoma to be in the CFP than it would be for Cincinnati to be in the CFP?
Yes, an undefeated Oklahoma, especially an undefeated Oklahoma. Nothing would shock me more if Oklahoma ran the table, won the Big 12, and did not get into the CFP because it's stuck behind Cincinnati. Look, 2 of their last 3 opponents are on the road. They're top 25 teams. And by the way, a win against Iowa State is still a win against a team above 500 that would impress the selection committee as well. I would even say that they could afford to lose one of those games, finish as a 1-loss Big 12 champ, and still have a chance at jumping over Cincinnati in the end.
Heather, real quick before we let you go, I'd like to throw my coworkers under the bus. Mike's trying to convince us that there's a path for Notre Dame. Right? Wrong?
I may have kind of come up with, it's still sort of possible. I wouldn't rule it out entirely, but you guys feel free to tame him, reel him back in a little bit, because they don't have the conference championship game. You know this, you don't need me to tell you this, to compensate for that loss. Was it a, quote, good loss? Yes, it was, but Mike, tell me, where's the statement win that's better than anything else the other contenders have? What am I missing?
I don't know, Heather. I mean, Purdue, all they do is beat top 5 teams, and Notre Dame took care of them easily. So that feels like it should be more than enough for the committee. It seems like it's set in stone.
You see what we deal with every single week here, Heather. We appreciate you hanging out with us. As always, we appreciate your expertise. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Heather.
Bye, Heather.
Thanks, guys.
Heather's the best.
I love her.
Listen, I don't know why you're trying to make this out to be like me trying to get Notre Dame in. I still don't believe that we're one of the 4 best teams in college football right now. I'm just trying to prepare you for what you all know is coming. Run from it, dread from it. Destiny arrives all the same.
Well, I'm telling you, it's going to be weird if Oklahoma and Notre Dame are in this thing at the end of the year. I'm going to have a
I don't think it's going to be weird. I think it makes complete sense if Oklahoma's in the CFP this year.
Let's take a look, by the way. Part of this comes from the rest of the best. Here are some of the rest of the rankings for you. Texas A&M goes up 3. That's significant. Wake Forest goes down 3 after their first loss. Mike referenced it earlier to North Carolina. Baylor loses and only goes down 1. So a little bit of a surprise for us there. BYU and Ole Miss, you also see rounding out the top 15.
Excited college game day this weekend.
Hey.
Yeah.
I'll be there.
Wisconsin, all they do is lose, but it doesn't matter. No, they didn't lose this week, 6-3. But they're up 3 spots. We were a little curious about their ranking last week. Now they're 3 spots higher, giving a lot of that Big Ten love, guys.
They love the Big Ten. They really do. I think this season that makes sense.
Those are 2 ranked wins for Notre Dame, by the way.
Congratulations, Mike.
I'm just explaining to you how the sausage gets made. But let's stop burying the lead now. Meat freaking meat, baby. UTSA, they ranked them. Not since Coastal Carolina in 2020 have we found a more just cause to go out and properly get behind here. UTSA goes out here and stamps it against UTEP in a game that could have been the site of college game day, and now they're sitting pretty at 23.
Wait, you just said not since Coastal Carolina in 2020. Like that was 1783. Like, you mean not since last year?
Congratulations, Jason. That's the bit.
I mean, not since
That's
last
the
year.
bit.
I mean,
Oh my goodness.
Step on the joke.
I'm a little lost on this, but you did say you went back and watched them, and you were impressed.
Oh yeah, that's a fun football team. I saw them throw a wheel route to a 275-pound tight end. It was incredible. All right, they've got Frank Harris, a quarterback that wears 0. You got a 275-pound tight end, and you have, quite honestly, an offensive line full of bad intentions. They're a lot of fun to watch, man.
Mike is so transparent at some point. Like, if they've got a fat guy that's mobile, a person that wears 0, and a bunch of linemen he likes.
Love.
That's why I like Michigan State. Cam Hayward's little brother is a thick tight end for them. He's incredible.
Thick.
with
I
two
like when
Cs.
you say thick for some reason. Okay, so Kevin McGuire.
We're gonna move away.
This guy tweeted, and I don't know, for some reason these tweets are making me laugh today. Kevin McGuire tweeted and said, college football playoff says win all of your games. Bearcats say, okay, done. CFP, play a Big Ten team and win on the road and win. Cincy, we did. CFB, okay, beat a top 10 team on the road. Cincy, taken care of. CFP, scrambling for alternate protocols. Can you be Alabama?
That's
I
funny.
don't know why that's making me
Funny.
laugh.
But
I mean, listen, first off, this is like the advice I always give kids. If you can go ahead and be a first-round talent, just do that because it's a way easier way to try and make your way in football. And in college football, if you can be Alabama, you should do it 10 out of 10 times.
Wait, this is another one. I hope OU loses a game so they can move up in the CFP ranking.
You need a quality loss.
You need a quality loss.
I don't know why I'm dying. These aren't that funny.
I do think, like, Cincinnati fans don't want to hear this, but this is my weekly reminder that, like, the real charge is be one of the 4 best teams in college football.
Yeah.
Like that's which is a very easy thing to say and a very complicated thing to discern. It's not about being undefeated. It's about being one of the 4 best.
Right.
And being undefeated in the group of 5 does not count the same. Consistently, week to week, you are not playing as tough a schedule. You're not playing as good a teams week in and week out.
I mean, and with that being said, Oklahoma's undefeated in number 8. So,
I have a question.
Which proves that people are still somewhat watching the games and all of this, which is good. And is also the explanation for Cincy. If you've watched Cincinnati the last 2 weeks and believe they are one of the 4 best football teams in the country, I have to question what you're watching. I think they're a really good team. I've gotten to call the last 2 games for them. I have a lot of respect for this football team. But if I have to be honest in assessing this, just like I said, Notre Dame is not one of the best 4-6 teams in the country. Like, I'm not delusional. I'm kind of having fun with that. But with Cincinnati, looking where they're exactly where they're supposed to be right now. I don't believe that is one of the best 4 teams in college football as they've played as of late. But they're in position to be down the stretch of the season, and they're going to have ample opportunity to keep showing that.
They're in position to be one of the best teams in college football, or they're in position to be in the CFP at the end of the season?
Both. Okay. I mean, there is a very good football team. Like the Notre Dame game is a prime example. When that team played to its full capability, they went on the road to South Bend and got a really impressive win. When they show up and don't execute at a level up to their standard, they play a close game against Tulane. They play down to the wire against Tulsa.
So Cincinnati is really excited about being in the Big 12 very soon. They have Big 12 shirts all in their merch store. It was actually one of my favorite things to see when I was in there. Do you feel like Cincinnati would be in the same position? Well, I guess this is like a weird hypothetical. Like, where do you think they would stack up in the Big 12 this season?
This season? Oh, I mean, they'd be one of the better teams in the Big 12. I mean, I look around that conference and say, outside of maybe Oklahoma, and that would just be giving deference to the team that's been there. I mean, this season, you could argue they'd probably be the best team in the Big 12.
Okay, I think they're better than Oklahoma.
Then I was going to say, so then they would deserve to be in
but
the
they have to
CFP.
prove that week in and week out against Power 5 competition each and every week. Like, that's at the crux of all this.
Gary Barta made it very simple last week when he was like, got to look better against bad opponents. I mean, that was they were given a very specific thing, like
Alabama.
To be clear, that was consistent with that Oklahoma team we just talked about. They have not looked good against opponents that are bad, and so they're ranked 8th.
So if you're sitting down with your professor and you're like, what do I need to do to get a better grade in this class? And he tells you the one specific thing, like that's what Cincinnati was given, was the one specific thing this week to do. They didn't do it.
That's very true.
Like,
I
they just
actually
didn't do
agree with
it.
that. Right. That's style points. They matter, and that's the one thing that we were saying about Cincinnati that they needed to do, and they didn't do it. You're right.
All right, we're gonna get now to some crunch time, brought to you by Cheez-It. You know how we do.
Love a little crunch.
Yeah, gotta get a little crunch in here. Up first, speaking of Cincinnati, this was crunch time. Mike, you saw it in person. Oh, is he over? Is it gonna be a touchdown? No, he is not. Cincinnati remains unbeaten after a wild finish.
Steven Anderson, their 240-pound running back, loses it a centimeter before the goal line here. They had missed on the drive before that, forced a turnover with Cincinnati in the shadow of their own goal line. As exciting a finish to a football game as I've seen all year.
All right, next up, Michigan State, Peyton Thorne, intercepted here by Mackey. That's the moment. I mean, there were so many times that I felt like Michigan State was getting it back in this game, and they just did not. Kudos to Purdue for getting the win. Last up, we got some big boy plays. High school offensive lineman. Look at this.
What? The Fultonville High School. Jackson Cusack throws the ball back to Derek Duval, who unloads an absolute dime piece down the field. That's your 6'1".
Got a slanger.
Mm-hmm.
He's 6'1", 285. How big were you in high school, Mike?
How old is he? Do we know? Like, what year is he?
Old enough to party, based on that throw right there. That is an absolute
33, 34, you know.
Thick king.
We've got a little bit more
top commenter.
We've got a little more love here coming from Army. Offensive line recovers the fumble in their game against Air Force.
Jordan Law recovers the fumble here in the end zone. Look at 70. Aware. 77 coming from over there, dives on the ball like an athlete, and now, in part because of that, Army will have a chance December 11th to win the Commander-in-Chief trophy when they play Navy, which they will likely be heavy favorites in. So,
Well,
see where they honestly, we used to have a pot in the room. Like a lot of places would put money in a pot, and if you were close around a fumble and recovered it, you could get the money from that pot.
Oh, wait, hold on. How much money? Like, how did you?
We didn't actually do the money because we were college kids and we didn't
have any.
We didn't get NIL deals back then, but our coach told us when he was in the NFL and guys had money, that was what they would do. Yeah. We didn't have money because we couldn't get sponsors from I won't say the brands on here because y'all didn't pay for airtime.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
We didn't get sponsored from Cheez-It, who we loved back when I was in college.
While Mike continues to eat his Cheez-Its, I'll remind you, fans, don't forget that Cheez-It is running the MV Cheese fan contest this season. Use hashtag MV Cheese contest. Tweet a photo or video that shows us your college football spirit to be entered to win a trip to the Cheez-It Bowl in Orlando. Look at that. Every time I see Mike painting his head with such
My
purpose.
favorite one is Christine's move like this. I
don't know. She told me to dance, and I was like,
I just think it's awesome every week. You know, I'm sitting there, I'm watching football, and all of a sudden I'll hear this word from Cheez-It, and then Mike's booming voice where he's like, "It's the Hall of Cheese," and I look at him like, "Oh, there's Christine and I."
All we did that entire day shooting that was just sing commercial music for everyone on set, and they probably all hate our guts.
Did.
All right,
No, they loved us.
You're watching Rankings Reaction presented by Cheez-It. Christine Williamson, Mike Golic Jr., I'm Jason Fitz. Here's your top 6. Georgia, number 1. Bama sitting at number 2. Oregon, number 3. Ohio State, 4. Cincinnati ekes up to 5. Michigan sits at 6 because Michigan State, it's 7. That's what's had us worked up and all in our feels over the course so far of tonight's show. It's an interesting moment as we look at what the committee has decided.
It just looks weird.
Wait, which part looks weird?
The whole thing.
It did. Well, seeing the 7 looked weird.
That did look weird. I honestly just I expected way more shuffling because, as we know, like, teams just did not play well. And I just thought there was going to be, I mean, there's plenty of drama, but I just thought there was going to be a little bit more drama.
We did watch this whole weekend and go, all right, outside of Georgia's defense, is anyone good at anything?
Right.
And I don't know. I didn't have a concrete answer.
And that's why I wanted things to be a little bit more spicy. But it's spicy enough.
The committee definitely,
they spice things up.
It was one spice. Like, we were looking for many
spices. Up
spices.
in a way that does not make sense.
Yes.
Like, at least if there was movement elsewhere, we'd be like, yeah, Alabama didn't look great and, like, whatever. But, like, they spice things up in a way that was like, what exactly are you doing, actually?
Mike, it was like a Dan Orlovsky spice. It was just salt and pepper. That's it. Like, it was just a little spicy.
Oh, no, Dan Orlovsky does not put salt and pepper on his food.
I thought he at least had salt and pepper. Like, I thought those were the only two.
Have you seen the man's spice rack?
I thought he only had those 2 in it.
It's like when someone opens up a wallet and a tumbleweed comes out here. That's Dan's spice rack.
So you're talking about my wallet.
I was hoping my staring at you would insinuate that.
I'm so confused by that.
So Orlovsky doesn't like spice, and I'm cheap. That's what we just made sure the whole world knows.
Have you never seen the picture of Dan's spice rack? It's
No.
the saddest thing on earth.
I thought there was salt and pepper on it.
It's like a Scooby-Doo ghost town.
Wait.
Tumbleweed goes by.
Why? Is it like a health thing?
Mostly the caucasity.
Okay, I was going to say it could be that, but I didn't want to say that.
This is a white.
And on that note, I will now take us to so much of this conversation we're having is about Purdue, and that gets us into poll assassins at this point because Purdue is absolutely, I'm just trying to move us.
I know, but I wanted to change that in the doc, and so now you just got to say it like it's supposed to be that.
Poll assassins. Yeah.
Where's Gio rank in this?
I'm just going to let it sit there for everybody to feel awkward about it. This comes up because Purdue has beaten Iowa. They've beaten Michigan State. Remember, Purdue at this point has 16 wins as an unranked team against AP top 10 teams, more than any school in history. Purdue has done a better job than any school, any program in history at beating top teams. Yet somehow it happens. So now, does that mean that Ohio State's on high alert? Or can David Bell and Purdue do the impossible and beat Ohio State in this one? I mean, it's interesting because Ohio State's just coming off a road win against Nebraska, where Nebraska took it down to the wire.
It would be a beautiful thing. Like, if Purdue beats Ohio State, then what happens? Well, everything goes right. Cincinnati's in the top 4. Oklahoma's in the top 4. Like, I just think it would be the most beautiful thing. This is the kind of stuff that I love.
Purdue is this, like, weird little, Purdue is reprising the role of Pitt in a normal football year. Mm-hmm. Because Pitt decided to be normal good during this year and not just the super weapon. Purdue decided to reprise that role. They do it by having David Bell, who is a certified giant killer at wide receiver. He is terrifying, and you should watch out for him at every turn. Aiden O'Connell's played really well. The offense throws it like 50 times a game. They're essentially like a Mike Leach air raid team. And on defense, they've got a legit first-round draft pick paying DM for them in George Karloftic. So, like, all of those elements together make for a team that is very prone to upsetting if you're not ready.
I will say, though, just like being an athlete before in another life, I think that obviously Purdue, they're the spoiler makers at this point. But mentally, as an athlete, when people start saying, oh my goodness, you're the one that's going to mess up every season, that's typically when it stops.
Yeah, because it's so much different than, like, handling success. That's what all these teams in a jumbled year are finding out. Like, being the hunted and
Right.
not the hunter or
Right.
vice versa, it's a super different lifestyle. So now if people start expecting things
Right.
at Purdue,
They're like,
you're right.
Oh snap! They're gonna beat Ohio. No, they're not. Actually, it's not happening.
We're not supposed to do
They
this.
did the thing. Already.
Aiden O'Connell, you mentioned playing well, and he had 3 picks against Wisconsin in a regrettable game, but he's completing around 72% of his passes, and over the last 5 games, 75%. You look at his QBR, you look at his efficiency and his yardage. I mean, that's a good Michigan State defense, and at least it's a competent Michigan State defense. Let me say it this way. And they absolutely trashed them throughout the year. And Iowa was supposed to at least be able to handle, but Iowa we knew didn't have elite speed.
Yeah.
What we do know about Ohio State is that they can cover, right? So, like, that's a little bit of a question for me is how Aiden O'Connell specifically performs against a much better defense than he's faced the last year.
I was surprised how well the Purdue offensive line went and pushed around Michigan State up front. There were legitimate holes there. Again, this is an offense that wants to overwhelmingly major in throwing the ball around the yard here. And so it's like anything else. If you can't get to the quarterback, Aiden O'Connell has proved very adept at spreading the rock around here in a way that's dangerous. And David Bell is a certified baller. Like Purdue just having another one of these freak show wide receivers that we're going to get to watch do cool stuff on Sunday soon.
Yeah, that's the funny part. On Sunday, they'll be like, where'd this kid come from? 1959 Illinois, the only other team to ever defeat 3 AP top 10s in a season while being unranked in the AP poll themselves. So that's only been done one other time.
You know who didn't lose to Purdue?
Notre Dame. Let's make that like that again. It's a Cheez-It game. Now we want to be family friendly, responsible. Every time you hear Notre Dame or a conspiracy theory, you just grab a handful, and by the end of the night, we're all gonna end up in my 600-pound life by the end of it, as much as you're talking.
I'm very glad that these ones are here because Toasteds are my favorite, and some of them are so burnt.
Oh, they're so good.
It's the most
That old
beautiful
extra crisp?
thing.
These are a delight. You got some
Okay,
social
so
in there?
this is not even a social thing. I think it's like a text message from somebody.
Oh.
It's from Jeremy Stevenson. I'm
Hi, Jeremy.
unsure who Jeremy is, but hi. So he said, I don't understand how Alabama can still be there after losing to a Texas A&M team that got beat by Arkansas and only had 6 yards rushing this past weekend, which we didn't mention that. It's like they need Alabama. Oh, it's like they need Alabama in the picture to survive. Oh, this was on Facebook. Got it.
Looks
I
very
thought it
much
was
like a text message. Either or.
Okay. So I will say the number.
I feel like that goes into what Heather was saying.
Yes,
but
very much. They've got an Alabama thing. It's
Right.
their kink.
But let's not make it like Alabama is not a team that belongs. At the end of the day, we can have this debate, but I see this constantly on Twitter where everyone's like, College Football Playoff Committee is forcing Alabama in. What year has Alabama made the playoff where they clearly and distinctly did not deserve to go? I think the one year that people dispute whether they should have gone was the year they didn't win the conference championship. Was that 2017?
Yeah.
Where they eventually won the national championship. Did they not that year? So, I have a hard time saying that we're making it sound like you're making me an offensive lineman. I understand that there are limitations to certain teams, but as I've said every week for weeks at this point, if you had to bet your house on Alabama versus Cincinnati, who we taking in that? Who would you take in that game?
I would take Alabama.
Right.
The thing Alabama needs to worry about is playing Georgia and good Bo Nix. That is what they need to worry about here because
that could be
Where
two
did
L's.
get Good Bo Nix from all of a sudden, by the way? This is
I don't know what happened here. NIL deals have been very kind to Bo Nix. I had no idea before this season and before NIL, by the way, that he had frosted tips. I didn't know that was a thing. I hadn't seen Bo with his helmet off.
I know, that's so true.
All right, so I wasn't the only one.
No. I wasn't expecting that. It's not the 90s. So, I think we've actually talked about this before, about Bo Nix's
yeah, we
frosted
have.
tips. Yeah.
Bo Nix is
he's the
frosted
Nick
tips.
Carter of quarterbacks in college football.
Which,
right now.
by the way, unrelated but related, I found out that I'm taller than Nick Lachey this weekend.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
We don't got to short shame Nick Lachey.
I was shook.
He
My
looks phenomenal.
childhood,
Nick
the
Lachey
90s.
is not phenomenal.
No, he looks phenomenal.
Oh, looks. I
He
thought
does.
you said
He
is
does look really good.
Oh yeah, no, he's a good looking dude.
I was just very surprised
we
because
can all
I just
agree
didn't feel like I was
98
going to be, but I thought 98
Fitz,
degrees
don't
was great.
do this.
I had 98 degrees posters on my wall, so just chill out. And I also love Jessica Simpson, so everybody just chill. But I was very
We're still
disappointed.
trash. I mean, you can have
I
on
was
your
very
wall all day.
disappointed.
You're still
I was
bad.
very disappointed to know that I was taller than Nick Lachey.
I
But
can let my head down.
he was at the Cincinnati game.
I can see anything
Here's another
crazy.
tweet that I want to get your thoughts on, both of you guys. Gary Barta seems like the type of grandpa that grounds you on a Thursday but lets you go out with your friends by Friday. Complete pushover. I need my CFP chair to have some grit.
Well,
he's in an unenviable position, though. Like, imagine if we finished this show and then I had to hold a press conference to justify what these two morons next to me said the whole time.
Whoa.
Like, how would that feel? Like, I'm having to answer questions about 98 degrees and why they don't suck. Like, I don't want to have to do that job. Like,
so
I mean, my God.
I do now.
Have
now
you
that
ever
I'm with
seen Jessica
you.
Simpson's old singing videos? I love her so much, but just go watch.
By
them.
the way, the notion that Gary Barta doesn't have grit, I feel like Gary is like an inherently gritty name. Gary Barta, those both hit kind of hard. Grit's not as.
Let's clarify. Unless you're Gary Streisky, but go on.
That is true. Gary. Oh wow, Gary. You know what? Forget my argument for Gary's Gary inherently soft name. I will say though, he doesn't need grit. He needs consistency because when we asked Heather Dinich about what he said about Ohio State versus Oregon, not being Ohio State ranked over Oregon when you have Michigan ranked over Michigan State who beat them, they brought up that Michigan State lost this past week. So just to be clear, the recency of Michigan State's loss doesn't matter. But apparently the recency of Michigan State's win didn't either. Like, I don't understand how this is supposed to work.
Do you think there's ever a moment where Gary's just sitting in the room with the other committee chairs and then he's like, guys, you're killing me.
All the Michigan State is a hyperspeed version of what happened with Ohio State and Oregon.
Except
they
for,
won.
yeah.
Then weeks later, Oregon lost to Stanford. And so by the logic displayed by this committee of, well, the loss happened recently, the loss to a Stanford team that is proven worse than we thought happened more recent here. It is just the accelerated timeline. And so I can't understand, with more sample size given to an Ohio State team they like enough to rank in the top 4, why a Justin loving God would let this happen.
Well, speaking of eliminations from the playoff conversation, it's time that we take a look at the CFP Eliminator 5000. Oh.
Okay.
Wow.
And look at this.
Oh, wow. Is that the Matrix?
We're taking a look.
Okay.
Yo, this is kind of scary.
No, this is kind of fire. Like, this is...
Whoever made this is...
See, Wake Forest got eliminated last week.
That makes sense.
Deleting. See? Deleting.
Oh.
Now, the question is, who are we going to delete next? Like, who's on their way out the door?
Well, first of all, here's my question. I know the answer, so I'm not even going to ask it. I was going to say, does Wake Forest, obviously the ACC is absolute, let's not say garbage because, shout out to Miami, shout out to Clemson,
garbage,
et cetera. Miami's on a 3-game win streak, okay? Everybody chill.
Oh, man, I tell you.
Everybody chill. Also, what are you going to say?
Oh, no,
going to say something great.
This Miami team is doing some things, man. Like, we can't rule them out for anything right now. They're playing great ball.
But are we surprised at all that Wake Forest gets completely eliminated out of the CFP combo?
No. It just isn't there this year, which is unfortunate because I love the idea of a different team from the ACC repping instead of it always having to be Clemson. Like, I've said this a lot over the last few weeks, but college football fans are like, oh, I'm bored with the same old, same old. And then you get a team that's not the same old, and they're like, oh, they suck. Like, it's hard to figure out what everybody wants out of this. But Wake Forest had an opportunity, and they blew it.
Yeah,
and frankly, you can't put that pressure on that offense to say, hey, score 60 or you're not going to get it done every single week. So,
by the way, we're asking about this weekend going forward here, who you think could be the eliminator. So Wake Forest got bounced this last weekend here. I don't mean this to sound like hot takey. Tennessee is a really interesting matchup for Georgia to me. Josh Heupel and this offense have only gained more steam going on. Look at the math on the game that they just won against Kentucky. It makes no sense other than the fact that now with Hendon Hooker under the helm for a while, they have got a downfield passing attack that works with that pace. I'm not saying, but I'm just saying.
Okay, cool. But if Georgia loses to Tennessee, are they eliminated from the CFP combo?
No, they're not eliminated from the CFP combo. I was just looking, and it's an interesting game.
Okay, at the end of the day, Tennessee's defense was on the field for 99 plays. They're going to enter this game already gassed because they went through a whole car wreck against Kentucky. Tennessee's going to get just railroaded in this one. I'm not saying that this is this week. Go ahead.
The Georgia defense is an unstoppable force of nature's fury.
Right.
I didn't mean to intimate otherwise. I apologize to my Justin.
To those.
I'm not saying that this is an elimination
Please
coming this weekend, but the next elimination I see that I think is pretty easy is, like, I could totally see Utah beating Oregon, and that's in 2 weeks. Like, that's November 20th. So, like,
I mean,
That one's coming up in a couple weeks. Like, that one, to me, is an elimination game for Oregon.
I think the easiest one that we were talking about earlier, Ohio State, Purdue. Wait, is that what we're talking about right now?
Yeah.
Okay,
Ohio-
never mind.
No, you just brought that one up.
No, I said if Purdue beats Ohio State, I think obviously they're eliminated. I feel like that's one of the biggest ones.
2 losses right there.
I just don't think that's going to happen.
I don't think it's going to happen either because, like I said, I feel like there's too much pressure on Purdue to actually make that happen. But I feel like if Purdue beats Ohio State, then they're eliminated out of the CFP conversation.
We do have Michigan playing Penn State this weekend. A Penn State team that made it very close in Harry versus Ohio State. But a couple of weekends ago, a lot of quality guys on that defense. As long as Sean Clifford is upright, that is an offense that can operate at a decent level here. That's probably not the one I would circle, though, here. Oklahoma and Baylor is fascinating to me. Like, I know
Baylor just lost to TCU.
Oh, I know Baylor just lost to TCU, but I wasn't counting on Baylor to be a CFP team, but I'm counting on the DNA of that team enough to, against an Oklahoma team that we have seen struggle right now, Dave Aranda's defense and a rushing attack like that against what Oklahoma's defense has been this season, that one to me is not far-fetched. Like, them and Oklahoma State are not a stellar matchup for this Oklahoma team down the stretch.
You're not wrong about Oklahoma, too, in the sense that I feel like within the season, the weekly game, like the annual game of Is Texas Back, we've been doing that every week of, is Oklahoma finally who they're supposed to be? Like, Caleb Williams gets in, looks good, then it doesn't look good, then it looks good, then it does. Like, I feel like you're right. Like, if Oklahoma has been just questionable enough, you never know where that's going to play. Christine, you've got some social interaction to get us.
Let's go back to the Wake Forest situation. The only thing missing from Wake Forest's resume last week was a quality loss. They're the perfect candidate for the CFP now.
I mean, that is going to, like...
I don't know why these words are making me laugh. Okay.
Quality loss, by the way. Great band
Underrated.
name. Great band name.
Yeah.
Oh, that's...
Like, honestly, if we were...
is that like a good...
If we were to become a band in the world of college football...
Should I bring keyboard next week?
We would be quality loss.
Quality loss. Christine's the singer. I'll play the keys, and you can just...
I'll be the sex appeal.
Well, I was going to say tambourine, but like...
Yeah, same thing. Tambourine Sex Appeal, also a great band name.
Tambourine Sex Appeal.
As long as you wear tight onesies.
Oh,
sorry, guys. You guys do the rest of the show.
Done and done.
I'm getting tambourinesexappeal.com. That's what I'm going to do for the rest of the night.
Wow, let me tell you what. Don't do that on your work computer.
Probably, never mind, after the show, tambourine sex appeal.
This Ethan Smith says the CFP rankings are right this week. And I wanted to ask you guys earlier, if the rankings were up to you, what would they look like this week? Because Ethan thinks they look good, and I disagree.
I disagree as well. If I was doing the CFP rankings this week, it would be Georgia at number 1. I would still have Alabama at number 2. I would have Ohio State at number 3. I would have Oregon at number 4, Cincinnati at 5, Michigan State at 6, Michigan at 7, Oklahoma at 8, Notre Dame at 9, Oklahoma State at 10. So I would write the Michigan State wrong, and I would write the Ohio State Oregon wrong.
You blew through those in a very
I was
impressive
confused.
way.
I heard Georgia, Alabama, and then you said Ohio State over Oregon.
It got very much like Charlie Brown's teacher after a second.
Do you want me to try and do it with a bunch of Cheez-Its in my mouth and see if you can understand?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes.
All right, now.
All right.
Georgia,
Alabama, Oregon.
Ohio State.
Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, Oregon, Cincinnati.
I like that you're covering your mouth. Just a beacon of professionalism and politeness.
Michigan State, Michigan, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, and Oklahoma State. There is a season lodged in my throat. I am very afraid I'm going to die.
Wait, you said Michigan State.
Clearly,
Michigan,
I just want you to know
Oklahoma?
I'm drinking water over here and not offering it to you.
Right here.
You wouldn't even have. Did you say Oklahoma at 9 or Notre Dame at 9?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure. And then Oklahoma State.
I have to get up and get water, or I'm going to choke and die.
Mike, okay, we'll let Mike go there. He's got his own water. Yeah. I would go Georgia number 1. I would go Georgia 1. I feel very confident about that.
Right, everybody does. That's all you got?
Yeah,
Okay, honestly,
I would go Oregon number 2, Alabama number 3. Not because I think Oregon's really that much better, but they at least played not hot garbage yesterday or Saturday. Ohio State, I'd go 4. I'd go Michigan. No, I'd go Oklahoma 5. Michigan State 6, Michigan 7, Cincinnati 8, Notre Dame 9, Oklahoma State 10.
I mean, I think ultimately you have to start from what the rankings were last week, too, because I feel like if the rankings weren't what they were last week, then your rankings would look a lot different. David, Politics Junkie, says it should be Georgia, OU, Cincinnati, and Bama for the top 4.
No.
Georgia, OU, Cincinnati, and Bama.
Cincinnati should definitely not be in there.
Oklahoma shouldn't. There is no world where Oklahoma is the second-ranked team in the country.
I agree with you. Let's get some expertise. Spencer Hall going to join us. Spencer, always appreciate your time. Make sense of Michigan State for us. We've been trying to.
No.
Okay.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not going to help you with that.
Okay.
You have to, this is like one of the great mysteries of the universe that makes absolutely no sense. You're going to have to deal with it on your own terms and come up with your own spiritual reasons why it happened. Because the only excuse I have is this. They weren't paying attention. Someone should say this. You can't justify it. Now, I understand. One thing we need to understand about a playoff system is this. There is no good ending. Endings always suck. Endings are terrible. They're hard to write. They're hard to make for sports seasons, okay? Even the NFL's hallowed playoff system, even the Champions League, there's some degree of absurdity. I don't know why we have to lean into it this hard, though. By taking a team where we go, hey, Michigan State, at least they'll solve it on the field. Why'd they play? Why did they play? Why did they play? Why did they play a game? That's what they're going to do anyway, so why did we just throw out the result of a game? The games all matter. No, they don't. They don't. So just go ahead and do it. Don't try to defend it, because there's absolutely no reason to do that. Oh, also, Oregon. I know that we're doing this thing where we're going, oh, well, you see, Ohio State's here and Oregon's here. And Oregon beat Ohio State, so they have their own kind of buoyancy. Why? Why? Oregon lost to Stanford. Do you know how bad Stanford is playing right now? They're playing bad football. Oregon has the worst loss of any of those top 4 teams. Explain that to me. The only reason is they're tethered to Ohio State, and in their minds, they can't move Ohio State or Oregon until someone else beats them and solves the problem for them, which is insane. There's no reason to do that if you don't want to do that.
Okay, so let's just dismantle the entire rankings, okay? Spencer, if you were to do the top 4 right now, what would it look like?
At the risk of my own absurdity becoming readily apparent in the top 4, I would go 1, Georgia, because no one's beating them. All right. 2, I would put Ohio State. I would. Now you're going to go, well, don't they have a loss to Oregon? Yes. Yes, they do. Would you like me to defend this? Yeah, they're awesome. And they look great. And they had a bad loss, all right, to a pretty good Oregon team. Okay. But if you ask me who's playing the best ball right now, it's Ohio State. That's who I'm going to rank. Okay. If I have to take the whole slate and project it outward. All right. Then I'd have Cincinnati, because they haven't lost a game. They have not lost a game, and they have looked, I think, as good as they can possibly look, and they have a quality win over Notre Dame. Also, I like to put them as high as I can, because apparently it makes people really angry when you put them up there. So I'll admit I have a little bit of an emotional motivation to do that. Also, Golic, I'm with you here. Number 4, I'm going to do it because I know what the committee is going to do anyway. They're going to put Notre Dame there. They want it so bad. They want it so bad. So here, I'll just give you that. Take it. Because these are all kind of absurd. But I have concerns about Alabama, because Alabama, especially as the season has gone on, it's not like they've solved a lot of their problems that are readily apparent, right? They ran for 6 yards against LSU. Yes, in a win. Do I think that bodes very poorly for their prospects down the road? Absolutely. Yeah, this is a problem. If you run for 6 yards, that's not an Alabama problem. That's a football problem. That's a problem for anybody. And ultimately, Bryce Young's going to have a bad game. I'm just predicting that at one point, Bryce Young, who has been unreal thus far, will have a game where he struggles and other people will have to pick him up. That's usually the run game. If the run game's not there, they're going to have a very difficult time. Will Anderson can't play running back. Okay? All right, how's this? I don't know that Will Anderson can't play running back. It hasn't been proven yet.
Yes.
He might be able to. But, I think Bama's too high based on their performance and based on a loss to a good Texas A&M team, but still a loss, and based on their current problems.
I have no notes for that. Spencer has given the perfect top 4 here. He understood
Beautiful.
exactly where I needed to go here. He understands the problems that I want to cause for everybody here. Spencer, thank you for introducing the anarchy that people are going to probably have to deal with in 2 weeks in reality to the universe here. Everyone check out Thinking Out Loud Mondays on the SEC Network. Spencer, you're great. Thank you.
Thanks, Spencer.
Thanks, Spencer.
Thanks, y'all.
All right, so we like to end every show with a little bit of fun, and it's time to do that with our way more important rankings. Christine, you're up this week, and you got to rank the weirdest college football props.
Yeah, I would just like to say that in 2017, the University of Miami invented the turnover chain. And so I ranked all the, I'm calling them turnover lames. So we have at number 6, Champagne Confetti. That was SMU, and they were like having a party
popping
on the
bottles on the sideline. It's so great.
It's weird.
You don't like this SMU bottle popping?
We're not doing this. We're not doing this. At number 5, the turnover hat and cane. A few teams have done that.
Yes. You don't like that either?
No, that's lame.
Who does the turnover throne?
Okay, here's the turnover throne. Who was that? I don't remember. I think it might be Tulane.
Oh, no.
Tulsa.
No, Tulsa has the Juju hat.
Somebody had it.
Boise State.
Boise State.
Turnover throne. The
That's
turnover
lame.
beads, that's Tulane.
That's lame. How are you going to put, okay.
It's New Orleans.
If you're going to, listen, if you're copying a team that has a iced out chain, why would you put beads around your neck? I don't care where you are.
Because it's New Orleans.
I'm looking at 3, 4, 5, and 6, and I want to combine them. Let me wear beads on a throne while I have a turnover hat and a cane and I pop bottles.
Who does the turnover pencil? I want to know. So like, oh yeah, look at. See?
This is so stupid.
Look at SMU.
You want to know why that's stupid? Because you are playing a football game. Why are we now in the club?
You know why that's awesome? Because you're the program that almost got the death penalty for overspending on football. You were the
even better.
We get the pony
we didn't talk about this turnover backpack that FSU
This
had
is legitimately terrible.
That is what is the point of that?
Oh, Akron with the big pencil? Okay.
Go to school. Kids.
Listen, Akron's just trying to survive, man. We gotta leave them alone.
What's wrong? Here's the thing. This is my turnover lames list, and honestly, there's this thing called like if you can't, people copycat people and just like be original.
Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, though.
It's so stupid, especially if you're gonna pull out a pencil.
How about you just act like you've been there before and not use any of the props?
Listen.
Says the guy that's never been there.
Listen, if you get an iced out chain and it's like, oh, let's use this for a turnover. Okay, cool. That's dope.
In Miami, how do you have ice? It's so hot.
It wasn't dope 2 weeks ago when Miami only had 5 turnovers on the year. It was less cool then.
It is. But yes. Let's not talk about what's actually going on right now. But when it started, it did breathe some life into the Miami defense.
Oh, it was incredible. I saw it up close and personal in 2018 when Notre Dame got the doors beat off. Can I say one that's a bit controversial? And I don't want to say this too loud because, again, I am very afraid of all the people that play defense for the Georgia football team. They are so good at football, and I don't want them to hit me. The weird spiky shoulder pads they do on the sideline?
Yeah.
I don't think it's that cool.
Why you got something against weird spiky shoulder pads?
You know why.
I mean, weird spiky shoulder pads are amazing. I don't care what any of you say. All right.
I don't understand.
Yeah, what? Huh? I don't understand why you
Raiders.
Yeah, thank you very much. Also, still, I want to know how I
just the original. Come up with your own thing, guys. Not everybody can be a Miami Hurricane.
Oh my God! Thank God. All right, she's Christine Williamson. He's Mike Golic Jr. I'm Jason Fitz. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Be sure to come back next week. We are here every week, getting you everything you need to know. This has been Rankings Reaction, presented by Cheez-It.
I'm glad you said you're Jason Fitz this week.
Yeah, that is true.
I got my name right. Feel so proud of that.
Although, listen, if you can beat Christine Williamson, you should do that.
Right.